To all of you. Sorry, I think we are 10 minutes behind schedule. Welcome to you all. Sorry to keep you waiting. I can't give an excuse of a traffic jam, which could have been in a normal circumstance, but today it was not a real traffic jam. We were in another meeting. Today, virtual meetings have become so quite often. We have been doing it, and one meeting piles up to the next meeting. So sorry about it, gentlemen. So thanks for being here. We have about 45 members here, totally, including me. This agenda probably what is posted across, which you all would have got on an email, as well as your WhatsApp messages. So I'll just try to welcome each of you, and I'll just try to give you a Zoom rules. Okay, I'll request each of you to kindly keep your whole Zoom meeting into mute. I'm trying to mute everybody because I think somebody, yeah, okay. So mute yourself if you're not speaking, and then you have a camera which can be kept on, preferably if you can. It will be appreciated. So when we take a photograph, when it comes to an IVI magazine, I think we know the Chennai, or not Chennai, but we have also, I've also forwarded this to other branches also. So who are there? Yeah, we have Mr. Ashok Advani, probably, who is from, not in Chennai, but he's in Bombay, but still I think he's here. So thanks. So we have various members who are from all over India level. Yes, and we have, we have Mr. Mahesh also, who was from Bombay and now in Chennai. So I think he's going to present a paper. So as we go across, I'll just tell those who, if you want to see the person who is speaking, just click on the right-hand side, view, and you just put a speaker view. You'll see only one gentleman who is speaking across. And if you want to see many, then you have an option in your Zoom to see either 25 or 50. So depending on your settings, you can see 50 people on your screen, yes, on a gallery view. So I'll just hand over to Anil Kumar, who is our chairman, to give a welcome address. Over to you, Mr. Anil Kumar.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjeev. I'll keep this short because we're starting a bit late. And on behalf of the Executive Committee of Chennai branch, a warm welcome to all of you, and members from Chennai branch, Chennai, as well as members from all over India. Happy to see friends and colleagues from Mumbai has also joined this virtual meeting. And first of all, I hope you and your family and the colleagues at your respective organizations are doing well, despite the upheaval on our life due to pandemic. And the pandemic, talking about pandemic, it has really affected all of us. The familiar pattern of our life has been adjusted, and our work has changed. The way we work has changed. The sacrifices has been made along the way. And when talking about sacrifices, particularly mentioning about seafarers, and the seafarers has taken tremendous sacrifices during the pandemic, and we should take this opportunity to salute our seafarers community for keeping the world supply chain moving and keeping us all of us in good shape. Rather, let's salute them. And today we have an interesting topic, and as you would know, IMO plays a critical role in the global effort to protect the biodiversity of the world oceans. The invasive species are considered to be the greatest threat for that biodiversity, and tackling those invasive species. And we have IMO has this convention, the International Convention for Control and Management of Ships' Ballast Water and Sediments, BWM Convention, popularly known as. This convention has been ratified in 2017. So now we are 3 to 4 years since the convention has been ratified. So we thought it's a right opportunity to look at, after implementation of the conventions, particularly on ballast water treatment system, operational related issues. And for that we have a very experienced eloquent speaker in the form of Mahesh Subramaniam. He has agreed to take us through the next 30 to 45 minutes to highlight and apprise upon the issues related with ballast water treatment systems. Yeah. So over to you, Mahesh.
Yeah, I just request, can I request Mr. Muthuswamy to kindly introduce
All right.
Mr. Mahesh, please. Mr. Muthuswamy, he's a EC member and
Good evening to all of you. I think Mahesh doesn't need much introduction. I simply say he's a brother of Ramesh. that will give you a very good introduction. He's a graduate in BMA 1995, sailed to 2007, carried out training for the PC and post seat engineers up to 2019. He was there for the last 1 year working as an energy efficiency manager, holds a PGD in sustainable environmental management and currently pursuing MS by research in IML. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Ramesh. Ramesh, over to you.
Thanks, sir.
Sorry, Ramesh. Sorry, Mahesh, over to you. Sorry, we have the habits of keep saying Ramesh, no? So sorry about that. Mahesh,
Yes,
sorry, over to you.
Yes.
yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Mahesh.
Ramesh, go ahead.
Yes. I hope you can see the screen now.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So, very good evening to all. And as I was just told in the introduction, this is a part of my survey which I had done for my IMU MS work. So there were two surveys that I had conducted. One was about the overall feel-good factor about the ballast water treatment system. And as in the introduction talk, Mr. Anil just said that this convention has been already into force for quite some time. And beyond the convention, now comes a time when the plants are right now on the vessels and we have a decent experience. And over the last 3-4 years, a couple of reports have been published. I have tried to look into some of the aspects and ask some peculiar questions which the other survey report did not cater to. So I'll take you through my survey and just the analysis what I have done. There'll be some open-ended questions for which I would not be able to answer. It is for the industry to decide. But there are some insights which I've got because parallelly to this survey, I've also done a bit of study on the ballast water filters and the treatment technologies. That being a very technical matter, I think the time would not suffice. So I will run through the survey report in terms of what do the seafarers, the vessel managers, and the people who are in the office would decide. So what do they feel about the whole ballast water treatment systems? So we had the treatment systems popping up from 2008 onwards, but 2016-17 was a time when it really caught pace. But the owners have a huge array of treatment plants they can choose from. So it's just not possible for an owner to decide based on his own likes and dislikes, in the sense that he has to take care of the trading pattern of the vessel. He has to look at the capacity of the ballast treatment system, which is basically your ballasting and deballasting rates, and also the trading pattern to which ports the plant is to be operated in, freshwater, muddy water, or is it going to be deep sea ports? So there is something that the owner has to think beyond. And of course, the two main things which we don't speak about is reliability and the cost of it. When we say cost, it can be broken down into cost of the owning, the capital cost and the operational cost. So looking behind all this, these are all the decisions that the owner has already considered, and now the plant is on board the ship. So we have a huge number of plants right now which are presently on board the ship. If you look at the surveys that are already there in the market, 2016, 17, 18, 19, the survey report has got a very good trend. The number of operational plants have increased dramatically. The number of plants which are not being operated have gone down. Is it because the plants are better, or is it because the rules have become stricter and plants are not, the ships have entered compliance zone? We don't know. But yes, more and more plants are getting operated. That allows us to take a feedback from the plant operators and the office that how are these plants operating. So my particular survey is, the question is on what are the problems that you are facing, and is there a trend that you can look for in terms of operating these plants. In these 3-4 years, there is also two major changes that have taken place. One was that the earlier BWMS code, which was allowing a plant to be certified, there was a particular, what you call as a guideline. Now that has been changed to a code. The plant approval right now is as per MEPC 372, and this is a code. The earlier one was 17458. It's a guideline. I think we all understand the difference between a guideline and a code. We would expect code to sort out our problems. And this is still to be seen because this code has just come in and it's not even 6 months old. We will probably see the effects of this code, but I have my own reservation, which I'll put in my conclusion. The next significant change that has taken place is in MEPC 75, where biological testing has now become mandatory. So I have attended a couple of commissioning tests, and in commissioning tests, the plant was never operated to check if the D2 standards are being met. In the sense that you check all the alarms, you do a ballasting, you do a deballasting, you measure flow rate, you see if your UV intensity of chlorination, TRA value is met, and that's it. But nobody actually takes a sample and tests it. This is something which has now come in, and just to extend this thought process a bit forward, remember that for Annex 4 also, this is going to come in the sense that STP, operational parameters, STP, testing of the effluent, that is also in the pipeline. So ballast water has already passed through, and STP is going to come up next. Now, the present generation ships which are right now on the oceans are either meeting a D1 standard, which is pure ballast water exchange, or there are some ships which are D1 and D2. These are the vessels which have installed a plant prior its compliance date. So it gets the benefit of doing an exchange or running the plant and doing a treatment. And then you have the ships which are only D2, the vessels which have already passed the compliance date. So come 2024, we would see the D1 shrinking and disappearing, D2 slowly shrinking, and finally by 2024, we expect majority of the vessels in this world would be only D2. Of course, there'll be exemptions, and there'll be some vessels which will be exempted from it. Apart from that, all vessels will be required to have a treatment system, and ballasting, deballasting that has to happen to meet the D2 standard. D1 becomes a contingency. That is, in case your plant doesn't work, then you may have to do an exchange. And of course, as a ballast water circular is there, people have to refer to the circular, and Intertanko has also provided guidelines for that. So the survey, why did I pick it up? It is a part of my thesis, which I was doing for my MS. And during the thesis, my study was mainly on filters, but I had an opportunity to understand what is the actual problem. So the number of plants that are being run on a ship gives me a real-time feedback. And this was done as a part of a ballast water treatment system in particular attention to filters. So questionnaire was sent to all the vessels, seafarers, office managers, and I got a huge spectrum of answers, and I filtered out to 135 responses, because there are a lot of people who came back with the response, I have not operated the plant. They had a plant, they didn't operate. So filtering out all that, I picked up 135 responses which had data in it, and out of 135, 8 responses were from the same vessels, in the sense they were double responses. So minus that, my entire analysis and of the survey report is based on 127 responses, and it's global. It's not restricted to Indian seafarers only. So the first question was, how is the performance of the BWPS? And my emphasis was on various port water conditions. So this particular statement, port water condition, is where typically whenever a seafarer talks, refers to that sometimes a plant doesn't work, sometimes it works beautifully without a problem. So trying to understand, is port the issue? Is the water the issue? So here is this analysis of the survey report. The participants of 127 responses had mainly worked on either ultraviolet or electrochlorination. Very few have worked on ozone, which is NKO3. 15 out of the 127 respondents operating the BWTS did not have a filter, for example, TechCross. So yes, when they're talking about a port water, I have to just keep in mind that since they don't have a filter, they would not be facing filter-based issues. So they'll be having some other type of issue. So this 127 responses, including 15 plant operators without filters, do have this problem. 58% of the respondents agree that BW's operation was satisfactory and operating in all types of water. The word is satisfactory. And 8.7% stated that a plant is very good, operation in all types of water. So I'm now looking, my focus is on the 58.3% who are satisfied with the plant operation. This probably, if I asked 2 years back, I would expect the other way around. You would have about 8 to 10% telling plant is working and they're satisfied with it. Now, more number of people are giving the satisfactory answer, and you see that response over here. This leads us to the second part of it. Only 3% of the respondents faced that the plant is bad. That is, they have frequent breakdowns. It has got nothing to do with the port water quality. Irrespective of what it is, the plant is bad. Only 3% of the respondents answered that. And 1 in 3, that is 30% of respondents felt that BWT's operation was poor with frequent alarms and breakdown. We have to understand alarms do come, but does that alarm lead to an operational issue? That needs to be seen. And breakdown would be typically meaning there's a downtime and you need to stop your operation and carry out repair and maintenance. You can't do much about it. So there is one more survey which I've done with respect to only this section, alarms and breakdowns. What is the sort of problem that you face, which is basically based on filter? The next question we asked is, yes, you have a problem. So what is the sort of problem that you're having? What is the malfunction that you face in your BWTS? Out of 127 responses, 33% felt that filter is an issue. They faced problem with filters. This is further broken down into filter choking, flow rate reducing, filter getting damaged, or anything to do with the filter as a whole. There have been some couple of cases that like the filter backflushing motor got damaged. It has got nothing to do with the, if you see initially, it has got nothing to do with the water quality, but yes, it is a filter related issue. Then 18.9% had a problem with disinfection related unit. When you say disinfection in electrolyzer or in UV, that is the disinfection part. So they had a problem with the disinfecting unit, and 36%, which is the majority, had a problem with control and automation. This is about not maintaining values, alarms, erratic alarms, and you also have a huge problem with respect to system freezing, data not getting replicated in the control panel, loss of communication between panels, because we have a huge number of operators who use different protocols. Some of them use as simple as a TCP/IP internet protocol using a wireless router, or sorry, a wired router. So they do have problems of this nature. So coming back, 33% have felt that the problem is associated to filter, and 36%, the variation is huge. I'm not going to go to the depth. I'm focusing more on this 33% in further questions. The control and automation related issues, which is 1/3 of the failure, are probably the most difficult to handle because it is very, very diversified. So we would expect filters are slightly easier to handle, but unfortunately not so. The number of filter designs available and the sort of problems we face in a filter is also pretty enormous and requires an in-depth study. The third question was with respect to the malfunction to a different mode of approaching that. What do you think is the reason for this malfunction? Yes, filter is a component, but why do you think the filter is failing? So here comes 45% of the participants have felt the port water quality is the reason. When you say UV parameter not maintaining, again, it is muddy water. When you say electrochlorination system, chlorine TRO value not maintaining, because the salinity of the water is low, it is brackish water or fresh water. So 44.9, that is 45% of the respondents believe that the plant is non-operational or giving problems because of water quality, not because of the inherent problems of the plant by itself. These are the same people who have told in 58% of the time the plant works because the plant is operating in a different atmosphere, in a different environment. 28% feel that training and lack of knowledge is responsible for the plant to be non-operational. Now, this is something that I would like to highlight. STW, that is STW subcommittee, has already taken up this, and they are looking at creating a model course for just ballast water training. That's a challenge by itself. It is going to be something like ECDIS course. How effective it is going to be, that needs to be seen, because we have more than 80, 90 plant manufacturers with different technologies. You could expect so many variations in the training modules that are required. But certainly, yes, there are some do's and don'ts which should be very, very common. And only 12.6% believe that a brand or a name of a plant has got anything to do with the operation, in the sense this plant is made by so-and-so company, so it's going to be good. Now, that is something which only 12% believe. The name has got no value in it. Majority of the people feel it's the port water quality and the knowledge of the seafarer which is going to affect the operation of the plant. Malfunctions can be prevented by these two parameters. Training, yes, we can handle. Port water, can we handle? Probably not. So that comes to the next question that he had asked. What are the reasons for the malfunctions? 30% respondents feel that operational training and knowledge, as I just mentioned. OEM training is done at the shipyard. OEM training is done at the commissioning. Typically, when you have a dry dock and the vessel is coming out of it, you have a retrofit or a new build, ballast water is just one more equipment. The OEM doesn't get time to pass on the information because he doesn't get the dedicated attention that he requires probably. There's a communication issue also with the OEM being a Korean or a Chinese. Half the knowledge is lost in the transmission. Also, the first set of people who are trained do not impart and transfer the entire knowledge to the second set of crew. So there's a steady deterioration or erosion of knowledge of transfer. Unlike probably a main engine or a generator, where the equipment is operated continuously and the knowledge gaining phase of a seafarer is very, very high, a BWTS is operated once in a while. So the experience and the person's own conclusions are probably lesser than what a training could have actually given him. So this also is a major gap we see. And as I just mentioned, IMO is looking into this particular matter. 12% respondents felt that the plant make has got some value to it. And these are also people who have given good training material. 9% of the respondents feel good maintenance is a key. A lot of people have responded that before they go to a dirty water port, before they go to a particular port, they anticipate a problem and carry out maintenance. They basically go on preventive mode, not on a breakdown mode. So this helps. Probably people can concentrate on this aspect and see how some people are able to run a plant in a particular port where others cannot. Just one, I'll probably share a slide with you towards the end if I get time. In the same port, the same maker, there is one ship which is able to run, another ship not able to run. So we need to notice why one fellow is able to run it and one fellow is not able to run it. So these are the changes within the same company, within the same fleet. Why one person is able to run, not one person able to run is probably some, I think we'll get some insight on that. So next question was about filter performance in clear water. Very good and good. So when you say clear water, I'm looking at the word turbidity over here. Turbidity is basically the transparency of the water or the opacity of the water. If you take a water in a glass and see through light, if the glass is, let's say, transparent, you would expect hardly anything in the water. That is, you expect a very low turbidity. This can be roughly translated into the word that is more important for a filter, that is TSS, that is total suspended solids. What we see is turbidity. What filter knows is TSS load. Filter does not know turbidity. Yes, UV systems are worried about turbidity, but filters are worried about the TSS load, which is also the total suspended solids. So 82% of the respondents do not face any problem when water is good. And that goes up when the water is bad, what happens? Now things change over here. 22% of respondents have still stated that the performance was good and very good. Whereas 78% of the respondents felt that the filter now becomes a choking point. Filter now has led to the plant not working. Whenever we say the plant is non-operational, we need to understand, is it that one component which is stopping it, or there are a series of components which have failed? So filter choking itself stops the operation. So they are having no choice but to bypass. If the vessel is having D1 and D2, well, they can still do something. If the vessel is only D2, then you have a lot more issues for compliance. So 78% of the plant operators faced reduced flow rates, frequent black flushing, and high differential pressures. People should know how much they should push and when they should stop. If you stop at the right time, you don't damage your filters. But if you push your plant a bit more, then you may land up with a high differential pressure and maybe damage the filter also. And also please remember, when the differential pressure goes, the delta P goes beyond a certain value, its cleaning effectiveness goes down. That is, backflushing efficiency drops as the filter gets more and more choked. So what is the concept of TSS load? This is a slide which is showing you the parameter which is required at the time of testing. MEPC 174 and MEPC 300 values have not changed. the TSS load in the control water, the water which is being used to test the BWTS, has to have a value of 50. You can see I have circled it in brackish of fresh water. You need a loading of 50 ppm, that is mg per liter is equal to ppm. What is not specified is what is the particle size and what is the particle count. So it is 50 ppm loading of the water, which is your input water test quality standard. And this has not changed between the old guidelines and new guidelines. And why did we come with the new guidelines? Why did we come with MEPC 372? Because we told that old guidelines is not good. We need to make it more stringent and we need to make it foolproof. But here we still have the same parameter of 50 ppm. Now this is from a research paper where you can see I've highlighted something in red. B stands for ballast, and we are only worried about the uptake because what comes into your ship is coming from outside. So we are worried about uptake of the water only. And you can see the TSS load over here: 690, 93, 310, 82, 88, 100, 350. Testing is at 50 and it is operating at this value. So do we expect it to work? Well, certainly we can't blame the filter or a manufacturer of BWTS because he has been asked to test. IMO is asking the plant manufacturer to test at 50 and it has passed. The revised guidelines, which is now a code, is still asking you to test at 50, but actual water conditions are far more inferior in terms of TSS load. The entire BWTS D2 standard talks only about biological loading and biological efficacy. There is no concern or there is no, I would say, inference drawn from water quality in terms of what is called as physiochemical nature of the property. So that is missed out. Now this is from an MEPC paper where you can see very clearly the range of TSS loading, which is ppm in China. You can see that in East China Sea in Yangshan port throughout the year, the average ppm loading is 230 ppm to 1560 ppm, and you tested this plant filter at 50 ppm. East China Sea, South China Sea, in all these places, remember the TSS load in a river or in a brackish water also depends upon monsoons and summers and winter cycle. So they do a 12-month cycle or 24-month cycle and then they map the TSS loading. You have no control. Your ship goes there, it faces that water and it operates in that water. But real life condition, the water is far inferior and I would say worse quality than what the plant has been tested for. So what do the people do? Some plant manufacturers, in this particular case in the photograph you can see there's a filter manufacturer by the name Hydac. He tests the filter in what is called as a Shanghai test. He tests its filter at 1000 ppm load. IMO requires at 50. But to instill confidence in the owner, and also remember that none of the, and I would say, I will not use the word none, very few BWTS manufacturers manufacture their own filter. Filter is generally purchased from a third party. So third party like Hydac, and there are a lot more manufacturers, are testing the filters far more ahead than what an IMO requires. And they differ in technology in terms of how the filter element works. What is the filter element cross section? So there are a lot of technology that goes into the filter, which probably gets hidden in UV or electrochlorination debate. So does the IMO type approval mean anything for a seafarer? You ask a seafarer, well, you know, that was MEPC 174, now it is MEPC 372. He tells, I don't care. If the plant works, it's good for me. If the plant doesn't work, well, I don't really know whether it is the BWTS guideline or BWTS code. So will the new code solve the TSS load part? Sorry, it will not. So where does the new code come into picture? The new code of MEPC 372 requires the operator, requires the BWTS manufacturer to specify system design limitation. Those parameters which are supposed to be your operational parameters with limiting conditions beyond which the plant is not tested for and the plant cannot be run. In the system design limitations, TSS loading is not mentioned, which means if a plant fails because the operating water condition TSS loading is high, nobody is going to take a blame of it because it is beyond test, it is beyond whatever the MEPC 372 wanted. So due diligence from the manufacturers, due diligence from the filter manufacturers is what has led to this industry basically taking a step far more beyond what IMO wants. When we ask a question, do you think a 20 micron filter will choke faster than a 40 or a 50 micron filter? A layman would generally say yes, but the answer is not yes or a no. A 20 micron filter, which is well designed, works better than a 50 micron filter. It is depending upon a lot of conditions. The filter design by itself is an art, which we would not probably know. We are more used to, our exposure is more to like the heavy oil, fuel oil line filters and lube oil line filters, but the technology of filters by itself is industry. So IMO new approval of 372 does not instill confidence in a operator nor in a manager. So this is a Shanghai test carried out by Royal Netherlands Institute of Sea Research, where they take the load up to 2000. They're capable of taking a load up to 2000. And what is very important in this is they also see the particle size, 5 micron, 10 micron, 20 micron, 50 micron. They see the spectrum of the particles and they do the testing and they give a good result. And one more small thing which I would like to highlight over here is when we say 15 micron filter, there is an ISO standard for rating a filter, and in BWTS, ISO standard for rating a filter is not followed. It is an arbitrary value of 50 micron, and if you see a good filter manufacturer in not BWTS industry but other industries, when you say 50 micron, the first question they'll ask is it absolute value? Is it a nominal value? Now there are things that we don't know about. Filters are a weak link in our treatment system, and more attention has to be paid towards this. So outcome of my survey was, unlike olive odor separator, which directly measures the ppm, BWTS measures something else. It measures the TRO or the UV value. It does not measure the organisms. And what is the BWTS meant for? To control organisms. So we do what is called as indirect measurement and indirect interpretation. A BWTS is considered to be operating well if the physiochemical parameters like UV or a TRO value is maintained. Nobody is measuring at this point of time the organisms. A failure to maintain UV or TRO is considered to be a failure of the plant. And there are a lot of papers submitted in IMO. Singapore has submitted 2 papers where even a proper operating plant with good TRO and UV value filter not having any problem, when you test that water, a lot of them fail. The D2 standard, which is basically a biological standard, has not met, but plant did not give an alarm. So my conclusion, the survey outcome agrees with similar surveys carried out by a lot of reputed organizations on a few common questions, indicating that sample audience, what I have considered, is a true reflection of what the industry is. The IMO adopting the biological testing requirements as a part of commissioning test does increase the confidence on the operation of BWTS. The operation of BWTS under varied inlet water conditions and the crew knowledge remain a challenge to overcome. Crew training is important in handling BWTS under these varied challenging conditions. Though the BWMS code has introduced the concept of system design limitation, which is called as SDL, you pick up any new approval certificate, you will find SDL mentioned on it. In the type approval certificate, the concerns of high TSS load and filter related issues have not been addressed in the new code. Filter makers are independently testing the filters alone at high TSS load beyond the requirements of BWTS manufacturer requirements to instill confidence in the filter operations. IMO recommends all vessels to have a contingency plan, which is BWM circular number 862, to implement in case of a failure or malfunction of a BWTS, which everybody should be aware of. So in case you are in a port where your water conditions are bad, then every ship should have a contingency plan, especially if it's a D2. So this is from an ABS 2019 study. So I have been following a couple of studies from various organizations. So some of my questions which I have asked and what I have analyzed do not have not been captured in the ABS study. But yes, more or less, there are a lot of common factors, including other issues and challenges. The blue one that you see, this is concerning training. So even for me, 30% of the problems are associated with training related stuff. So that's my presentation. Thanks a lot. And I hope that it was informative, and questions from the audience, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mahesh. Thanks for in-depth study and research which you have done and across shared to us. If you can just stop your screen share, I'll request you to, yeah, thank you. So may I request now Mr. Ramesh Subramaniam to, I think Mr. Jay Kumar is not here. Otherwise, yeah, so Mr. Ramesh Subramaniam, can you just moderate and probably just ask the questions if they're in chat? Anybody, if you want, you can post in the chat mode or so that Mr. Ramesh can take over. Over to you, Mr. Ramesh.
Thank you, Mr. Vakil, and thank you, Mahesh, for excellent and lucid presentation. Well, that was really a very, very genuine research paper, and I'm sure that it has been an eye-opener for all the people who are basically presently sailing and also ship owners and superintendents who are here. And I hope they can identify the problems related to this topic. And now, personally, honestly, let me tell you, personally, I'm very, very happy that I'm not sailing any longer. So looking at all these complications, I'm very happy that no, I quit. And now that you have heard so much of this ballast stuff, now it is time to blast the questions now. So I just request the members to either type it in the chat box. I think that would be more disciplined and well organized. Just type your question in the chat box so that the message is not get lost. And as I call out that member's name, you can of course unmute yourself and really physically ask the question. I will not repeat the question unless you have a audio problem. So I request you to type the question, and when I call out your name, you please just give us a brief intro, like, no, are you from a shipping company, or you're from Bombay branch or Chennai branch, and are you working for, like, just a little bit so that people know, like, know what type of, I mean, who's the man behind the question. So now I invite questions on this particular topic, and the floor is open to all of you. Yes, I think our chairman, Mr. Anil, will
Yes.
can
Ramesh,
inaugurate with the first question.
yeah, Ramesh, can
Before
I?
we deep into this.
Yeah, thanks, Ramesh. Can I intervene? So I can see
Yes, sir.
Ranjit.
Floor is wide open now.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. I can see Ranjit Gurugamage among the attendees. Ranjit, you're joining from Sri Lanka.
Wow.
Ranjit is muted. Can we hear him? Yeah.
You have to unmute himself.
If he's there, he should, I mean, probably if he's hearing you, he can unmute himself.
Yeah, Ranjit is the chairman of Institute of Marine Engineers, Science and Technology in Colombo. Yeah, I can see him on the call. All right. Over to you, Ramesh.
Okay, can I continue, sir? Mr. Anil, do you want to inaugurate with the first question from your end?
No, just a comment. Just a comment. Ramesh, just a comment. It has been Mahesh very well presented and a lot of insight into practical aspects of ballast water treatment systems. Very informative and gives us a lot of insight into it. Just a comment, Ramesh. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So the floor is wide open for questions. Of course, as I already told you that I will call out the names. So the first question is being shot from Mr. Vijendra Jain. So he can just unmute himself or make himself visible and ask Mahesh the question directly. Yeah. So I'm just going by first come first in first out. Yeah, that's it. First question in. Mr. Jain.
Ramesh, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me, please?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, but we can't see you. I mean, I can't see you. Can anybody see? Okay, anyway, it's
He's visible. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mahesh. It was a brilliant presentation, and you have done extensive amount of research, quite evident from your findings. My question, although we discussed a lot about the filters and the failures, what are your views about the manufacturers, BWTS manufacturers? You mentioned Techcross as one, who do not use any filters in their systems. Any ship owner would much rather have one less problem to deal with. And if there aren't any filters, would that mean that the system would run much better and be eradicated of all these problems which come associated with the filter, or is the manufacturer Tecros taking chances?
Okay, Tecros also has models with filters, but those models are not getting sold as popular as the ones without filters. Secondly, for your question, yes, there are other manufacturers of BWTS without filters, and a few of them have alternates like hydrocyclone. For example, Wuxi uses a hydrocyclone instead of a filter. So effectiveness, well, for small flow rates, it is very effective, and they have their own clientele and they have their own operational problems. For example, anything to do with UV, muddy water is an issue, turbidity is an issue. There are, in the recent couple of years, there are 2 or 3 manufacturers which have really come up. One is EnviroCleans, which has been taken over by a different company right now, which is ScienceOfast. So they do not have filters. And it's also called as in-tank system. So what happens is you take the water directly into your system, into your tanks, and then you pump the chlorinated water or sodium hypochlorite into your tanks directly through a circulation system. It requires a network of pipes in your tanks, and it requires a residence time, what you call as a residence contact time. So each plant has its own advantage and disadvantage, and everything is available on the table. Probably there are something which is under the table which the owner will not know. The nuances of each plant, what can and what cannot work for a particular person, has to be decided based on his profile of operation. So, I mean, just to put it across, yes, I'm aware of at least 4 plant operators who don't have filters, and they're not at the top right now. Tecros has a problem. If you look at the whole concept of BWTS, it can be broken down into physical separation and then disinfection. Physical separation is not possible the moment you take out the filter. So your disinfecting power goes up. So one of the very common examples I give you is you have to shoot the elephant and a rat. If you have a filter and you've taken out all the elephants out of the water, then the potency of the treatment or the power of the treatment, what you require, the UV intensity or the chlorine value, TRO value, you require is far lesser. If you have a filter, it saves your power of disinfection. If you do not have a filter, you spend heavily on the disinfecting power in terms, if it's chemical, then amount of chemical you dose will go up. Then operational cost will go up in those words. For example, we have I will not like to name the manufacturer. His plant doesn't have a filter. It is a patented injection of a chlorine dioxide. And he faces a problem. When the ship is trading in Africa, you don't get that chemical. And the shelf life of the chemical is 1 year. So there's no clean winner in this. So the owner has to be very careful in choosing his plant.
Right.
I hope it answers your question, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It is very correct. I had read somewhere about a Singapore Maritime Authority giving a presentation in MEPC
Yes.
about the disadvantages of units which do not use filters. And I think you have mentioned the same thing, that if you don't use a filter, you have to make up in the disinfection process by additional disinfection and additional infrastructure in the tanks. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'll just add one more point, sir. It's a myth that if you don't have filter, you'll have sediment buildup in your tank.
Okay.
It's a myth.
Okay.
So it is not directly connected, because what sediments we're talking about is 20 micron. So even if you have 50 micron filter, 20 micron will pass through. Thanks, sir.
Okay.
That's very well spoken, Mahesh, and it's a very good question, Vijendra. So let me move on to the next gentleman, Mr. K. Shankar from Chennai branch, a very senior member of our institute and who takes keen interest in every marine topic. So I request Mr. Shankar to shoot off the question, please.
So you're muted, sir.
Mr. Shankar, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Yeah.
Mahesh, this is with respect to a ship owner's perspective. What made you to go into a research and study on this problem? Has there been any major hassle that has been arisen out of the failure of such an equipment during surveys in port? and reasons thereof? And how does the shipowner tackle based on the approved BWSS being installed on board the ship and a penalty being imposed on shipowner for no fault of his? Over.
Okay, sir. So I'll just break your question into a couple of small steps. So first of all, what is the implication of a BWTS not functioning? When you are taking in ballast, if your BWTS is not functioning, well, you may still bypass the BWTS and take it. But when you do that, if your ship is only D2 certified, that is, you are supposed to run the plant, and whenever you're looking at a D2 certification, it talks about an operation. An operation consists of ballasting and deballasting. So it's not one cycle. In the sense, you can't take water bypassing and then deballast it through the plant or other way around. There are very few plants which are a single way plant. That is, it runs only in one direction. In other direction, it does not run. So when you are in a particular port and your plant fails, there is a threat that if you have unmanaged water, you may be asked not to deballast. Theoretically, the IMO says water has to be given to shore reception. But practically, there's no port in the world which can accept shore reception. And moreover, we don't have a facility to give to shore. We don't have a international shore coupling sort of an arrangement. We don't have a manifold for that. So when our plant fails, that is the importance I was trying to highlight earlier. We need to have a contingency plan. The contingency plan very clearly tells if the plant fails, what is the step to be taken. And in this contingency plan, we need to differentiate between a plant failure versus plant operational and water quality bad. Because if the water quality is bad, the vessel can come out and carry out an exchange and run the plant. So
Now,
that...
No, tell me, let me interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Do you attribute this to a ship operator's problem or his failure to control the system properly due to improper maintenance, or you attribute it to the manufacturer's failure?
Okay.
The question is this, that in case a claim arises in the future with regard to such a penalty, a crew failure is claimable, whereas an equipment failure is not a claimable offense. So how do you safeguard a ship operator's interest, especially as an officer and engineer on board the vessel, whether it is a fault of his under any circumstances for a system not properly functioning due to operational failure, or is it an inherent fault of the equipment manufacturer for which an approval has been obtained?
So the approval has been given as per a standard which does not reflect the true water quality in the port outside.
Okay.
The manufacturer will not be held responsible for it.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't think we can conclude this from what I can gather that it is passing the bug. So I have told you that I have tested it for this and you operated beyond the scope. So I am not responsible. And shipowner obviously would like to get himself from any source insurance. So I think this cannot be concluded in this session. So I move on to the
I
next.
think if you just allow me, I'll just add on. Sir, we have got written circulars from the plant manufacturers that the water quality is beyond IMO specified limit, and hence you cannot expect the plant to work. Alfa Laval has given this, it's there in the website. Optimarine says so. So they are washing their hands away, sir. And then the vessel has to deal with it.
I would like Anil or Suresh Shenoy to give their inputs on this.
Can I ask you one more? Can I ask you one related to this? If ship owners, when they choose the plant, they can specify the routes where they are going. Accordingly, they can choose a ballast water system. That should be there, I believe. If not, manufacturer cannot make for different setup, different conditions of the ballast water system. It's going to be difficult.
That's true, sir. I think I'll just wait for Mr. Shankar's question to, I think, Anil and Mr. Suresh.
Go ahead, Suresh. Yeah.
Mr. Suresh, do you want to?
No, I have nothing to add because I am still yet to receive the feedback from our fleet cell regarding problem. Officially, we have not received much issues.
Okay.
Mahesh, it is very
Anyway, Mahesh is going to move on with that, still answering that. So I can just add my little bit of doubt here, and because it is very concerned with the question rightly being discussed. Suppose you have a ship going to Kandla and what is this, Haldia? It'll, and if you ask somebody to make something for Haldia, I mean, that fellow, that plant manufacturer will go wild. And anyway, so let's continue with that question. Mahesh, can you answer that, please?
Yeah, as
The
I
original
mentioned, yeah, as I just mentioned, in the port of Haldia, 2 of my company ships with the same plant of Alfa Laval, one was working, one could not work. So there are a lot of conditions which, for example, at what draft, in Haldia, which berth, is it that what is the direction of tide and which month? Because if it is pre-monsoon, post-monsoon, a lot of variations are there. So that is where the problem is. And to come back to Mr. Muthuswamy's question, so yes, sir, there are manufacturers who go for a mapping the vessel's route and deciding. For example, if you're calling freshwater ports very frequently and you have limited draft issues, for example, when you're going to freshwater, electrochlorination plants will require you to carry seawater in your tanks so that you can operate in freshwater. So you would have a draft restriction. You cannot take seawater in an off-peak tank. So those manufacturers prefer probably a UV-based plant. So as I told, there's no winner in this. But yes, given a set of circumstances, there are, I would say, very strong pointers that this is the best plant for you, given the set of circumstances.
Mahesh, the only thing is this, whether it's the liability of the ship owner, because ship operators are innocent. He goes through the standard operating procedure, what is prescribed in the manual.
Yes,
the basic understanding is, if a ship comes to port and she is constrained to, she will deballast all the good water, she will come in with the minimum ballast required for berthing. And after berthing, she will go out after loading, she will empty this one to the minimum required outside, go out, deballast the complete and reballast with clean water in mid-ocean before it goes to the next port. That is the standard operating procedures for all ballast water. So that when it is in port, the ballast water treatment plant is not used. It is only in mid-ocean when they do this, they circulate this through the ballast water treatment plant so that next port when it arrives, this plant is operating in a safe condition, so that your ship operating engineer is also well protected under the standard operating procedure. So why I'm asking you this, what made you to research into this? Is it an outcome of a penalty or it's an outcome of failure of surveys? Has it caused any major hassle either to the ship or delay in the ship leaving the port or ship being arrested? That is what I'm curious to know about.
Yes, sir. Yes, aware of it. We have faced issues. Right now, if you look at port state control inspections, they have not penalized any of our vessels, nor any of the vessels that I have surveyed. This is not from my company, right across, because more or less everybody has reported the matter. And as I told, we are still in a transitional phase. Lot of them are having D1 or D1 plus D2, where vessels are only D2, which is about 20-25% of the vessels in the global fleet. They are more careful, and that's what you just mentioned, standard operating procedures. This is where the knowledge of the crew comes in. Why people have told that they have not faced problems in bad water port is because of good knowledge of a good procedure on board a ship. We cannot blame the plant. At the same time, once our experience builds up, a good operational procedure will help in reducing the number of malfunctions and also reducing the number of non-compliances.
Thank you, Mahesh. Well answered. Well done. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ramesh? Mr. Ramesh, any more questions? Okay, I think Mr. Ramesh has lost signal, probably.
Mohan Tyagarajan, what is the status of port-based ballast water treatment?
Okay, sir. I'll give you this is from USCG. if you use a port-based system, the liability still lies on the ship. This is what they have very clearly stated. If you take a port-based system and put it, unless until it is called as a shore reception. So there's a bit of an issue when you take a port-based system, like you hire a barge or you put it on the guy comes and puts a container on your deck, the liability still remains with the ship.
Okay.
When we say pure port-based, for example, Daman shipyards have it. Ro-ro ships are using it extensively in some ports. In such case, the terminal provides the plant. And this is very nice for liner services where you very clearly know where you're coming in. When you take a very dirty water, let's say Kandla or Haldia, and you give it to a UV guy in a port-based system, even he can't handle it.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Muthuswamy, please. Mr. Muthuswamy, I think you.
It may not be relevant to this. The testing procedure is approved by USCG now. There was a discussion going on. Whatever the biologic is coming out of it should be not incapacitated. That's what
Yes,
I mean. It should be
the word that USCG was using was living, and the word IMO uses is viable.
viable.
So
Correct.
right now the differences still maintain. In IMO, you want the thing to be non-viable, and USCG wanted to be non-living. Non-living means dead.
Dead.
However, with the new regulation of USCG coming under the VIDA Act, Vessel Incidental Discharge Act, which is still in the draft format, the USCG has come one step down and will allow non-viability. That means they will accept non-viability as also one more criteria. So they have come one step down, and IMO has gone one step up with SDL. So they're trying to match these two requirements. Presently, US and IMO are different.
Thank you.
Next question from Vidyadhar Kamath. In case of a plant failure, any data on how the local port addresses the issue?
Yes, sir. IMO very clearly mentions that in case of any failure, the vessel has to coordinate with local port and decide the course of action. And the flag does not have any role to play in this. So whenever you have Intertanko as well as the IMO have given a contingency plan, and contingency plan very clearly mentions in which phase the operation has failed. You pick up the contingency plan and you're expected to approach the port who are supposed to approve your contingency plan or give you an alternate solution. The alternate solutions right now which are there, some may be theoretical in nature, are shore-based port reception, or the vessel can be asked to go out to a dedicated or a designated area and do an exchange and come back. Okay. So right now, we have not seen this happen. Ports by large have accepted a malfunction, and they also would appreciate a transparency in reporting.
Okay.
Okay, Mahesh, then I move on to the next. Can you hear
I ask a question?
Who is this, please?
This is Vidyadhar Kamath.
Vidyadhar, yeah, that was, yeah, you are in, you are supposed to ask. Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I am on my evening walk actually. So maybe there's some traffic sounds in the background. But coming to this question of the local port, we have faced a case where we were asked to go out and do a ballast exchange.
Yes.
Now, if I look at the IMO rules and say that, okay, we need to prevent marine species from invading each other environment, etc. And at the same time, we look at IMO rules that on EEDI and EXI, which says that you have to reduce the carbon emissions. Don't you think there is some difference in these two views? One for the carbon emissions and one for the ballast water? Because in the end, when I go out 200 miles to do a ballast exchange, I am burning a lot of fuel. I'm not looking at the monetary cost. I'm burning a whole lot of fuel to take a loaded tanker out and do a ballast exchange 200 miles out.
Yes, sir.
Over.
Sir, the problem that probably you're facing is more of a penalty, but even not to compare a BWM code, ballast code with MARPOL Annex 6, Chapter 4, within MARPOL Annex 6, you look at NOx reduction and you look at GHG, they themselves contradict. So a lot of times the rules are phased out, and you're absolutely right in this. A BWTS does add to the power requirement and does add to energy requirement. But having said that, the priority is on biodiversity preservation, because they feel that a carbon has got a natural cycle where you can remove carbon dioxide from the air through various means. Whereas biodiversity, once it is gone, it is gone. It takes a lot of time for it to come up. So these are two different groups having different set of rules, but you're correct, they contradict each other. And these two people, the set of people, biologists who sit in MEPC for the what you call global ash, are not the same set of people who sit for MEPC on air pollution. They're two independent school of thoughts. But yes, they do contradict.
Can I ask a follow-on question?
Yeah, sure, sir. Please go ahead.
Follow-on question is on the port-state control. Every convention takes a time for it to be accepted and come into force, and then actually the PSC themselves understanding what is this convention about. We have some ports in Africa as such, where we have issues with the local authorities. Now, if the port says that I want to test your ballast water, and of course it takes, we know how much time it takes, but they say that I want to test your ballast water, or even it can be in India also, and they say that, okay, I'm going to take a sample. Now, till the time the sample is taken and it gets analyzed, we don't know which lab it will get analyzed in. What will be the result? Master has to sign for the sample taking, etc. The vessel is liable. I don't have any control over the result. I'll end up employing a local P&I, for which also I'll spend XYZ amount of money. So is there any safeguards on this in the IMO code?
Vidyadhar, you hit the nail on the head. This is an actual problem that faced as the ship owner's representative, what you have just stated. It was a hell of a problem working through the club to negotiate with the local authorities. And it is a very, very critical factor that need to be studied in depth. I appreciate your question. It is a very valid question. Over.
And just to take it forward, sir, I don't think this is concerning ballast water. He can take sewage water, and he even, we have got news where they check the amount of lube oil, including the quantity of oil declared is not correct, as because you're not calculated the one in the pipeline. So they find a reason for it. And as Mr. Shankar has told, this is more of, they look for a reason. You cannot tell them you cannot do testing of ballast water.
Yeah,
But yes,
to correct, sewage requirement is not a requirement in MARPOL. There is no requirement. If it is clear, crystal clear, then there is no requirement for a PSC to follow.
I'd like to contradict that. We have German water pullers, we have US, all these people, they do take samples and they do test it, and the fines are levied. If you just go to port state control of Paris MOU, you will find such deficiencies also listed over there. They can take the sample.
They can take the sample provided they have sufficient,
sufficient
grounds
data
to prove that it is not working. That means your
yes,
water is black in color and all those things, then it is sufficient grounds that your sewage plant is not.
And generally,
so that is the secondary part. But my part here is, I am worried about some nice PSC guy in some nice port talking me that I'm going to take a sample. And what he does with the sample, I'm not sure about. But I'll get a report that shows that I have more than 50 viable organisms. And that means it has failed and you have not treated it properly. Tomorrow, if this happens, then what measures I have in IMO to safeguard my interest?
Since as per IMO, you don't have any measures. As long as your plant has been operating fine, you have everything as per your, what you call, operational limits. You have taken all due diligence. Beyond that, there is no way you can guarantee, sir.
Yeah, Vidyadhar, to help you with this, As owners, we can nominate our club to appoint a lawyer and a surveyor to be in site to help you, so that the samples are taken, 2 samples are taken, one for them and one for our surveyor, so that both are tested simultaneously in order to ensure that the results coordinate, the results are similar. That is the only way that we can protect our interest there.
I will. I need to continue this decision because it is a bit commercial also.
Correct.
Sorry for that. Now each sample to test it, I think the cost is something like $6,000 to $8,000.
No, sir. It is generally 1,400 to 2,000, depends. UV.
I am not sure because
Yes,
we
sir.
get
Yes,
charged.
I'll
about
leave that out.
6,000.
I'll leave that
Yeah,
out. And as per our record, sir, there is no African board which gives us this testing facility.
Exactly.
Because as per USCG, we try our best to test. No, because the sample has to reach in cryogenic condition, that is in frozen container
Exactly.
within
Exactly.
8 hours. A lot of rules regulations for that.
Exactly.
So
now my thing is, as a big ship owner, I can look the authorities in the eye, and I can challenge them. Now I will be a small ship owner with 4 to 5 ships. What do I do?
Sir, this money here, I wanted to add, there are certain ports where none of this ballast water system rules will apply, because in ports like Rosario in Argentina, it is indirectly told through the agent that it is $8,000 or you keep staying there for ages together. So
Exactly.
In Argentina, okay, you give the best of sample, even clean water, it will come as it's got plenty of microbes, and they don't even step on board. So I have had 3 times when the ship came alongside and went away. And until the owners understood that they had to shell out $8,000 as way of bribes, nothing works. So while it is nice, and this, it's almost like, my rule, my country, my rule, and that's my way. Same thing also applies to Black Sea, where they come and test, and they'll just stop it. Something is wrong.
Ukraine. And sir, to add to Mani sir's comment, in Argentina, they also sometimes give you chlorine and ask you to dose. You have treated water and still you're asked to put chlorine in that. So country-wise, you can't control, sir.
I had 3 times where the ship had to, cast off because we were occupying time and our samples have failed. Nobody came on board, no test. And then the agent finally said, sir, there's no way out. You have gone out 3 times. You have lost 8 days. Just pay up the money, tell the owners there's no way out.
And this has got nothing to do with IMO regulations. And sometimes even the limits.
Comedy was $8,000 were exchanged and nobody came on board. Yes, your sample is passed.
Okay, can I intervene? I have the responsibility to just have a look at the time also. We are running short of time, and these type of things like it will take us to a tunnel with no light. Once you get into the bribe and all that, it is no longer technical. So we will get into a territory which will have no answers, clear-cut answers. So I'm sorry that I interrupted you, but it was a very interesting discussion. And I'll take one more question. Shankaram was there in the queue. After that, probably I'll be forced to take an opinion from everybody. We would wish to continue because it seems to be very interesting, and I'm sure that people have got lots and lots of questions on this. So what I suggest is we can have another session at a mutually agreeable time, which will only for QA. Is it okay with all of you? Is it okay with all of you? We can organize one more 1 hour only on QA, provided Mahesh is gracious enough to say yes.
I have only one question.
Yeah. I had the last question. What I thought I would put, I will put it in is it came from one gentleman whom I can't name. No, he's just got initials there, AA. So he had a lot of questions. So I'll take this question and keep it as the last, and then we'll again discuss depending on the time available, whether we go a little bit more or we can call another session, especially to conclude this. This topic is so interesting, and it's so new that you can talk for more than 4 hours and still doubts will be there. So yeah, Mr. AA, if you can just tell out your full name,
it's the same person. I'm the same person. My name is Anil Ambadi. Yeah.
Okay.
This is Yeah, this is just my last ship, which has been working in this ocean guard type of BWTS. These two issues I had faced. One is this TRO and one is salinity. No matter what I did, these two alarms were not going off. And the manual was not having good amount of explanation. We called a technician, and due to this present COVID times, technician coming on board vessel is very difficult, considering their quarantine measures and our measures on where we are in the present state. But we have to keep the ship moving, and the tremendous pressure coming on the chief engineer for this to get this system activated as soon as possible, and to prove, and the owners to prove everyone that the system is okay. So now thing is that we try to see in the manual, no much of information. We try to contact the makers. Makers are just giving check this, check that, check this. Nothing is working out. So my question is suppose the technician is not able to attend the vessel, or neither the crew are not able to solve this problem for more amount of periodic back-to-back voyages, where nowadays now STS is now on the rise. So what is the answer for this by the ship owner to the third parties?
Yeah, Anil, I did not want this presentation to become too technical, because when I do a technical course, it's a 3-day course in which 1 day is only for deck officers and 2 days for engineers. So there we go to the depth of such issues. But what you're telling in very simple terms, if your vessel is only D2, then you have to follow contingency plan and take dispensation, because your plant is non-operational. But if you're having D1 plus D2, or you have only D1, the way you operate is different. So you have to go as per a ballast water management plan. And the technicality of this, I think we can talk. I can take an hour on why a TRO value is not coming up. There can be hundreds of reasons. But I totally agree with you. Manual is very sketchy. They'll ask you 4 things to do. And the 5th thing is always contact the manufacturer.
Yes, even the videos also say this alarm, contact manufacturer. This alarm, contact manufacturer. Because this ocean guard is coming from China.
Yeah, and please remember, no manufacturer manufactures anything. They assemble. And whenever you send a question, I have been in manufacturer's office in the factories where I've seen how the mails are being handled. So first thing is, just I'm digressing from the topic, but just to make things what happens behind the door. When the mail comes to you from your ship to the office over there, the first thing that happens is gets translated to the local language. Yes. And then it goes to various department heads. And then the ping pong happens. It is your problem. It is your problem. Okay.
Yes, very true.
The TRO guy tells TRO is not the problem, communication is the problem. Communication guy tells no, TRO is the problem, or other side is the problem. So this is exactly why it takes so much time to sort out a problem, because it's not a wholesale approach, not like MAN, B&W, or Wärtsilä are doing the job. This is a piecemeal approach.
Finally, in the end of the day, it is the chief engineer's competency is put into the highlight. The chief engineer is not able to solve it. At the end of the day, this is happening nowadays. And second thing, one more question is there. Sorry to ask one more thing. Is anything like onboard testing kit for this ballast water is on the pipeline for onboard test kit?
There are a lot of advertisements for it, but we, I mean, do you want to get into that also? Are you not happy that you're not testing that water?
We are. See what we are getting. Yeah. Oh, in the sense, testing by the third party.
There are a lot of test kits. For example, you have to do an incubation test, which will require an incubation, incubator, and all that. Why do we as seafarers want to get into the biology of it? This is done in authorized lab, and one more thing is we don't have an ISO protocol right now. USCG has a protocol. It has got EPA norms, whereas ISO norms are not that specified. In MEPC right now, the norms are being specified. I think ballast water circular number 42 will specify that. But we discourage sea staff because it requires a bit of experience to handle biological testing. Yes, if you talking about pure chemical testing, TRO testing, it can be done. But when it's biological testing, you need to culture it. You need to incubate it. I think that's not a domain. Yeah, please.
But already in sewage plant, we are doing this already. We are doing the E. coli test.
Yes.
Ramesh,
we are running short of thinkers.
I mean, I'm really sorry that I am cutting short this very interesting discussion, which would go on for another 1 hour. I mean, we had promised a particular time, so we did extend our time by quite a margin. So if all of you really, as Mr. Vakil had proposed, if all of you are really very interested, keen, we'll organize one more session, provided Mahesh agrees. He is a very busy man, and if you all there and he come, we can have another one for 1 hour only for QA. I mean, at 1 day's notice is good enough. So you can just mail to Mr. I mean, you can just tell your opinion in the IMEI WhatsApp group. So we'll take it. Like, no interest is still there, so we can organize one more session. So with that, probably I
Can
am
we-
conclude this QA session and hand it over to Mr. Vakil for further closing.
Thank you. I think
Yeah, sorry, can we have the presentation mailed to us? It was a very good presentation.
Yeah, Mahesh, I request you to just type in the chat column your email ID so that some of the questions can be shot to you at your mail. But of course, then the other people will be deprived of your very luminous answers. But I'll try to extract all the answers from Mahesh and we'll try to see whether it can come into the MER or something like that. Right? So that the knowledge pool is not get lost. Okay, thank you so much. Then Mr. Vakil can take over, and Mahesh, you type. Yeah, so Mahesh has typed his email ID. So you can. I request all of you can take note of that and shoot off the questions and anything which is interesting. We'll try to put it to MER. Anyway, MER people are looking for very quality articles. So this will keep the MER running for one more year. I can see that. Okay, Mr. Vakil, please can you just conclude the proceedings, please? Thank you so much.
Thanks for a very, very dynamic anchoring on the question session. Thank you very much. Thanks, Anil, and thanks all the members who are here. It was an interesting session, and thank you, Mahesh. I think, yeah, your research will continue, and I think you will need to come every month or and give this part 2 and part 3 part of it.
Yes.
Yeah, now look.
So I have my guy, Dr. Sivaswamy, also listening to me.
Mr. I'll hand over to Suresh Shenoy, please. May I request Mr. Suresh Shenoy to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Okay, sir, for my sir, one more thing.
No, it's over now. It's over now, please. We are running out of time. We have to maintain it. We'll have it next time. Okay. His mobile email ID is given. You can shoot the question to him. And like Mr. Ramesh has suggested, that we'll have one more session. Okay. Otherwise, there will be no end to it. Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me thank our most vibrant person of today's evening, Mr. Mahesh Subramaniam, with this exciting topic, and all the more thank all the members for their interactive and making it more interesting. And thanking Ramesh, I don't know how he managed to control them and told them, okay, we can convince them that we can have it next time. Thanks to Mr. Sanjeev Vakil for arranging this. And I thank all our past chairman and the past president of the institute and all the other members of the other chapters also. Thank you very much. And once again, I thank Mr. Sanjeev for hosting this. And last but not the least, I have to thank the host, Mr. Kirtan, for wonderfully arranging it, juggling us between two rooms in the sense before we started it, we had executive committee in the room beside you, which was completely airtight, so you couldn't hear what we are talking. And with the latest technologies, then we came over to here. So very nice of you for your all interactive session. So we hope to have more such session in the future. So Mr. Vakil will be conducting or organizing or hosting more such technical sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Somebody call me later, man. Shankar, how are you?
Fine, sir. Fine, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shenoy. And I think, yes, the more the merrier. I think we do at Chennai chapter, we think every alternate month we'll have a technical session. But now, if this is the response, I think we should have it every month. I think it could be once a month or it could be once in a fortnight also. So I think we require in volume, we require each of you to keep participating and give us, motivate us by giving topics and also youngsters who are here in the group also were sailing like Anil. Probably you also can come and present papers. I think we want people selling stuff also to come and present papers. We don't want only people assured, but then I think Anil Ambadi also, I welcome you also to, and others who are there who could not get a chance. Please do come and present papers because we who are assured probably will also get educated by you all. So I welcome each of you and thank you once again to each of you for being here, and special thanks to Mahesh for your valuable time of 2 hours, what you spent here. Thank you very much. And now I think officially the session is over, but then if I think the meeting can be on, if somebody has to speak, exchange some ideas, fine. Otherwise, we are closed for the day. Thank you.
Dr. Shivaswamy, good evening. Shankar, how are you, sir? Dr. Shivaswamy, kya kar raha? You are muted.
Yes, sir. I'm fine, sir. I hope all of you are doing, sir. You are doing well.
கொஞ்ச நாளாச்சு கண்ணன் சாரோட வரோம் உங்களை மீட் பண்ண வரோம்.
Yes. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible, sir. Thanks for joining, Dr. Suswami. Thanks for joining here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Shankar, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Vice Chancellor வந்தாச்சா? Has he taken charge?
Right, sir. So we are closing, sir. If we
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, please, Sanjeev.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks.
sir.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
sir.